what's going on, folks? This is Clay with Clay's AC and Auto Repair and Accurate Engines here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And today I'm going to show you how to remove the harmonic balancer off of your 4.4 Land Rover LR3. Now, this is going to be a pretty encompassing job, so it's going to take you quite a bit of tools. But if you're planning on doing the timing and you need to remove the harmonic balancer, I'm going to show you the way that I figured out how to do it. Not saying it's the book way, just saying it's the Clay way. So if this video is helpful, please consider subscribing, clicking the notifications, sharing my videos, and sending me one of them thumbs up. And if you want to even do me a bigger solid, put on one of my sweet playlists, turn the volume down while you're sleeping at night and letting that sucker play from front to back. I'd greatly appreciate it. Remember, if anyone else can do it, I promise you can do it too. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start removing 4 6mm screws and oil cap to be able to remove the top engine cover. Now we're going to take a 7mm or a flathead screw and remove these 2 clamps, loosen them, pull off our mass airflow sensor, and loosen this clamp here. Now we're going to squeeze this so that allows these tabs to pop up, and then we should be able to wiggle that and pull it off. Now we've got 7 Phillips screws that we need to remove from the airbox top cover. Now we're going to disconnect the battery, put a drain pan underneath it, and remove the radiator lines to drain the coolant out of it. Now I'm going to disconnect the throttle control. It might not be necessary, but if we just pull up on this, we can pull the bottom of the air filter out. Now we're going to remove this upper radiator hose, but I recommend you remove it from these 2 clamps right here, because if you remove these 2 clamps right here, then you have more possibilities of leaks, and we can reuse these clamps. These are the proper clamp removal tools that you use. For these, they fit in there, and then when you push them together, they lock, so they hold these clamps. And this is a pick tool. This allows you to get underneath the back side of the rubber hose without destroying it and break the seal between the plastic and the rubber. Once I've taken my pick and I've put it underneath there, I just rub it around. I'm definitely not trying to pick through the rubber. Grabbing it with my other hand allows me to move it like this and remove it from the radiator. Now we're going to remove the upper coolant overflow reservoir hose from the top of the radiator fan shroud. Unclip the electrical connector that is connected to the upper radiator shroud, and I'm sure it's not supposed to remove like this, but mine came right out and it just snaps right inside there. Okay, so I've got a super neat and handy way to take off fan blades, and I'm going to explain to you how these things work. So this fan blade is a clockwise fan blade, and how I know that is because the fan blades are pointed this way. If they were pointed this way, it'd be a counterclockwise. How that is because we know the fan needs to spin in this direction to blow air onto the engine. If it was pointed this way, it would have to spin in this direction to blow air on the engine. And as the fan spins, it actually tightens itself up, and that's why them little nuts down there are so hard to get off. And of course, there's dozens of tools on how to do this, but this trick only takes about 30 seconds, and we'll zip that thing off there. Okay, so we're going to take the bit, and we're going to put it right on the nut, and we're going to put it right on the edge of the nut. And it's as simple as that to loosen it up. Now, to pull the fan up and out of our way, to do our timing, we're going to release the plug from there and pull it up and set it over the top of the motor. Obviously, we can unplug it completely by releasing this plug. Now we're going to remove the lower portion of a radiator fan assembly by pulling back on this clip and pulling up on each side to be able to remove it from the radiator. Taking a 1/2-inch ratchet and sticking it on the end of there, we can loosen up our outer belt, turning it clockwise. Now taking a 13 millimeter, we're going to remove the bolt that holds on the tensioner assembly. Now taking a 3/8 with an extension, we're going to insert the extension end into the 3/8 tensioner here on the backside belt. We're going to turn this counterclockwise to relieve the tension from our belt. With the tension relieved on our belt, we can remove it from our alternator or our idler pulley right here, pulling the belt away from the engine. Okay, now taking a 15 millimeter, we're going to remove the nut for the tensioner. We could certainly probably get the belt to the back of it, but it is going to be simpler just to remove the bolt out of there and remove the tensioner entirely. Now taking an 8 millimeter ratchet, we need to loosen up this hose right here, and the bolt is right up underneath there. Now I'm going to take out the bolts that hold the bracket on there. Okay, I'm going to release the hose clamps here and down there by the coolant reservoir tank because that'll leave the line intact. Okay, so now we need to remove this pulley right here because this pulley is holding this bracket on here. This is held on by 3 10 millimeter bolts. These two bolts that were up inside here were 8 millimeters. We also need to maybe get a piece of cardboard, put it back here, because if you end up using air tools and you come back and you smack your radiator, then you got a hole and you got big time problems. I'm going to loosen each screw one at a time. Loosen is the key word because I'm going to use a screwdriver and I'm going to prop it up inside here so I can hold my ratchet and turn my screw loose at the same time as I break them loose. And with having all 3 screws in there, I should be able to loosen them up easily. Once the pulley is removed, we're going to find 3 8 millimeter screws that hold the idler pulley on there, and then the 2 8 millimeter screws up there. Now the belt is all removed and we're ready to replace them. Now we're going to do the unbearable task of taking off the harmonic balancer. I've played this game with Land Rover many times before, and I'm not going to explain to you the dozen different reasons that I'm doing exactly what I'm doing, but I am going to do it without spending hundreds of dollars on specific parts and specific tools that we don't need, and just do it this way that I show you. Okay, to get this super sticky, super hard harmonic balancer off, we're going to need a regular puller like this, some kind of hub plate because this is too small and it fits down in the middle of there, 24 millimeter socket, an impact 1/2 inch drive, and we're going to need a 5/16 18 pitch tap to tap out the 2 small holes that are down in the harmonic balancer to pull it off. These are 3.5 inch bolts. And I'm using a couple washers in case I need to space it out. You can see right down inside here that there's 2 holes, and them are the holes that I tapped out. Obviously, prior to showing you this, it's kind of a touch and feel situation. You can't really see down in there with the radiator in the way. Now, we're going to loosen the bolt. We don't have to remove it entirely, but if we do remove it, we're only putting it in about a quarter of the way. We're going to have it go down about 5 or 6 threads down inside there. We're going to actually use the puller to push against the bolt so we don't have to insert something up inside there to push against the crank. Now all we're trying to do is we're just going to pull the harmonic balancer back just a little bit to get it loose. On the back side of the harmonic balancer, there's a locking ring that actually holds this on here real tight. You don't even need a bolt to hold this stinking thing on here. It's on here so tight. Even though I know better from past experiences, I'm going to try to do this without my spacer in there. I've got it centered and it should be fairly square. I've got both bolts tightened down, so this should be level. Even though it kind of looks kittywampus on the camera, but it does look pretty straight, I guess. So now we're going to go ahead and tighten this bolt down and see if we can pull this back. Okay, to give it a little bit more push, so this bolt is a little bit longer, I've just got a 10mm bolt and I stuck it down inside there, and that'll protrude out enough to give me more push. All right, so to make sure this is centered, I actually take my finger and I stick it up underneath there, and as I tighten up my tool, I make sure that my bolt is in the center of my crank bolt. Now I've got an extra amount to push. Okay, so I'm going to start working the harmonic balancer off. If you notice at the base of the harmonic balancer and the timing cover, the harmonic balancer is coming out. Now, I didn't try this when I was doing it, but I do believe you could hit this with a hammer, pushing it back towards the timing cover. That will release the locking ring that holds the harmonic balancer on there. I actually pulled mine completely off with my puller and didn't do it that way, but hindsight being 20/20, I'm pretty sure I could have just tapped this with a hammer and that would have released the locking ring. Okay, so we've got that to slide back a little bit. So what we've done is we've undone our puller right there. We've added 3 washers to it, and we've unscrewed the crank screw main harmonic balancer bolt a little bit more so we can pull it out just a little bit further to get it past the locking ring. Once this comes past the locking ring and we take this apart, it should be pretty loose and slide right off. Once this starts spinning, we should be able to take our bolt out and remove it, and we can tell that it's not on our keyway any longer. So I'm going to go ahead and try to remove this bolt right here. And I left my other bolt inside there because them things are a mother to start. And then hopefully I can just pull it off. But it's not coming off yet, so I'm going to have to pull it a little bit more with my tool. Now, I made this look simple on here, but it is definitely not easy to get this thing off. There were several attempts and lots of editing of video to be able to remove this. Now, I'm removing my puller. This is probably about the 4th time that I've done this, and I'm going to remove the harmonic balancer crankshaft bolt out of here. I'm leaving 1 bolt in my puller in case I need to reinstall the puller back onto there, and it's easier to put in only 1 bolt than it is to put them both back in and try to hold the puller at the same time. But luckily, this was my last attempt, so she's about to come right off. Okay, so this concave ring is exactly what makes this thing stay on here and actually goes on there real tight. This goes right down in the front of there, and then as you tighten up the bolt, it slides that down and locks it to the crank. Hopefully you watched the whole video. I should have recommended prior to doing this putting it at top dead center and marking the top of the harmonic balancer prior to taking it off, but at least I'm letting you know. It shouldn't matter, but this does have probably some counterbalancing to it because I can see it's drilled for balance. So make sure that you do that before you're like me and just take it off. I'm just gonna have to put it on and hope that it's right. Well, hopefully you folks found that video to be interesting and you learned a couple little tricks that you didn't already know. I greatly appreciate you guys watching. If you would, and I was helpful for you, please consider putting on one of my sweet playlists on the Clayway. Turning the volume down at night while you're sleeping and letting that sucker play from front to back. I greatly appreciate that. If you've got a question for me, you can hit me up on Clay's AC and Auto Repair on the Facebook Messenger. I certainly try to answer them for everyone that I possibly can. Remember, don't be the next to them, be the first of you. And if anyone else can do it, I promise you, you can do it too. God bless.